Welcome back to the ModernPreneur Podcast, where listeners come to learn, grow, and succeed.
Today we have a very special guest, somebody who is very close to my heart, somebody who has been an avid entrepreneur for such a long time, somebody that I have followed, and somebody that has inspired myself in becoming an entrepreneur. She was raising 2 kids as a young entrepreneur. She has just been super successful, multi-million-dollar kitchen and bath company that she has started, and she is my mother. So we are super excited to have her here today. Her name is Dawn Whyte. Please give her a follow on all social media. We'll drop that link in the description below. But yeah, we're going to get started. Are you ready?
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be a part of this.
Yes, we're so excited. So to kind of give the audience a little bit of a backstory, we want to kind of have you just dabble into your story kind of from when you started as an entrepreneur, or maybe like what sparked you as being an entrepreneur to where you are today. And then we'll get deeper into it as we go along.
Exciting. Great. Thank you. Yeah. So I started my family very young, as you know. I had Jasmine Yu when I was 16, and that really left me with not a lot of options for moving on to a higher education necessarily. So I was waiting tables, my first job hostessing at the local Big Boy.
Young Dawn.
Shout out Big Boy.
Yes.
And then as I became a mom, I had to still finish high school. So I was...
What was that like?
It was intense. It was really intense. I definitely didn't have a social life at that point.
Right.
I was waiting tables at night, weekends to pay for daycare so I could finish high school, to then pay for more daycare to get back to working and making money. So it was difficult. It was definitely difficult. And I knew that I wanted more. So really just starting with, the crappy jobs that everybody starts with without much experience, without a higher education, without really anybody handing me a great job. I just did the miscellaneous jobs that were available to me at the time, and finished high school. That was a number one. Yeah. And so that summer, after I finished high school, I had my second baby, and that made paying for daycare even much more expensive and harder to achieve.
Right.
But so then from there, I got sick of the service industry. I couldn't really always be gone at night, and couldn't always find a reliable babysitter to wait tables at night and work in the bar scene and waitressing. So I put my resume together shortly after high school and hit it up to all the local ads in the local newspaper.
Traditional, like yes.
It. Yeah.
If you don't have a job, it's a great place to start.
Absolutely.
Classifieds.
Absolutely. The classifieds, you got it. And I was lucky enough to get hired as a receptionist at a kitchen and bath firm.
Fun.
And that was really kind of where everything started. I rolled right into a 9-to-5 position with them. It was a few older folks that were a little bit further along in their career, I would say. At that time, my manager was, I think, in his early 60s. There was only 2 other employees there. They had scaled back, and so I was hired to answer phones and do all of the typing and just kind of the atypical secretarial position things you would think of.
Did you have any experience with even that stuff?
Just really what I learned in high school from Microsoft Word and typing, and I learned how to use
that class
fax machine
when we were in school. Typing class, the computer class that they had. I remember having that in elementary school.
I don't think they even teach typing anymore, but yeah.
I could have sworn. I remember it being, for some reason, it was that we had a typing class.
Yeah. And you had to pass all the things and do it in a certain
time. And
they
had the floppy disks back then, and you would stick them in we still have the towers, but yeah.
Yeah, when we had our typing class in high school, I remember, I think they put a paper over your hands so you couldn't look at your fingers, and then you were timed to, make sure that you weren't looking at your fingers, and yeah.
They don't do that anymore. Yeah.
Really?
Nope.
Yeah.
That's surprising.
I will tell you, I actually started my entire career with a high school education. I mean, literally everything that I learned at my local high school really got my foot in the door anyway. So thank God I had those skills.
Right.
So tell us a little bit more about like your first job that kind of led to inspiring you into being like a kitchen and bath designer.
So it's a funny story actually. So as I was saying, the management, there was only two other employees there, and one of them was a draftsperson. She was the third employee, and she worked from home. And the two kitchen and bath designers basically are glorified salespeople, if you will. They were selling cabinetry, selling countertops. And I would be the one, because I was the new girl or the newbie, I had to work every Saturday. And they had this beautiful showroom, and the showroom was open Saturday. Well, all of the, the older employees that had been there longer, they had more seniority, always, had the weekends off. And so during the week when I was just doing like the typing and the clerical type work, there were people that would come into the showroom, and the designers, would greet the clients and talk to them. And I just listened and paid attention. And I, after 6 months of just really listening, it was a funny story, actually. It was a Saturday. Well, to fast forward, Monday morning, all of the bosses came back to work, and I had taken 3 design retainers over the weekend and sat them on their desk.
And that's how it's done.
Which was not even in my job description. Like I wasn't probably even allowed to do that, right? Like it was just you get the client's lead, the name, their phone number, and you turn it into the bosses Monday morning, and then the bosses call them. Well, I young enough that when the bosses weren't around on a Saturday and clients would come in, I was just really comfortable with repeating what I had heard. And you would try things that maybe, like if somebody else was paying attention or listening to you, or you wouldn't really say. But because nobody else was around, I was a little comfortable, like stretching my legs or,
I think that's awesome that you had that confidence.
I think that's really what made the difference. Like nobody else was there to correct me if I said something wrong, and I could just kind of wing it a little bit. And so one Monday morning, the bosses all came back in, and I had taken 3 design retainers over the weekend, and they were just blown away. They're like, okay.
What's going on?
Yeah, that's the hardest part. So that's kind of what really set the incentive for them to make me a designer. But what had happened is, they had given me a handwritten ad for the classifieds. And so I, as a clerical position, had to type up the ad and submit it to the local newspaper for the classifieds, which I did. And then I thought about it over the weekend really hard. And then that following Monday morning, I put on my, my best suit, the one and only suit that I own. And I dressed up and I put my heels on, and I walked into the boss's office and I said, I really want to interview for this position. And I think they kind of like scoffed at me a little bit. Oh, which, by the way, I was 19 years old. Okay. Right. Let's just back up a little bit. Right. So there was a lot of jokes about me through the office, snot-nosed kid, or wet behind the ears, or, she's green. And, at 19, I think you would just kind of, somewhat
that comes with the territory. Right.
Yeah. And so, later, it was much later down the road that I had read in the personnel files when I was cleaning out the office that they said that I blew the interview out of the water. I was very personable. They liked my attitude. And after, a few 3 weeks of interviewing other people, they gave me the position. They made me a kitchen and bath designer. And then I spent the next 6 months just learning how to do that. And then it was easy enough to replace, somebody at the clerical position. So here I am, maybe just turning 20 years old, and they're sending me to, kitchen and bath cabinet manufacturer showrooms and national conferences, and just really sinking me into the whole industry, if you will.
And those places also give you lots of inspiration and like kind of can teach you and also build your confidence as well.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool as somebody so young and not really exposed to anything in like a high-end industry.
Right.
You, like you said, Jasmine, you go to these shows, and then, not only are you inspired by what you're learning, but like you look around at the other people in the room, and, maybe there's a 45-year-old woman there that just looks, like she stepped out of a hat box, just like hair is perfect to a T, just, nice jewelry, nice clothes. And you could tell that they probably just have a really nice life. And you're, looking at somebody that's, a kitchen and bath designer, and you're thinking, oh, well, I'm, they just made me a kitchen and bath designer too. So a little bit of inspiration there.
Which, to that point too, have you ever had somebody in your life like prior to like working the ground up, have you ever had somebody that was like, because for me, it's always been you, like in the back of my mind, like I've watched you work really hard, be an entrepreneur, like making your own time. Like obviously it's the not 9 to 5, but you end up working way more than a 9 to 5, even when you own your own business. But was there ever somebody for you in your life that was like that, or?
Well, it's ironic. I never really realized it at a younger age, and it wasn't just till like the most recent years. I mean, my mom was a big inspiration for me. She had 5 children. When I was 3 years old, my mom got remarried and had triplets. And she always had to work several jobs to, really take care of everybody and pay the bills. And even though it wasn't what I ever really considered like successful entrepreneurship, looking back, it really was. She owned her own cleaning business. And, I was always embarrassed as a child thinking of my mom as like a janitor. As, she was the one that always had to go scrub the toilets or,
like
clean the bathrooms. But, honestly, it really did instill a lot in me to know that, she did run her own business, and she, at the end of the year had to file her taxes, and she had a lot of freedom with it, as far as having 5 children at home. She was able to, work when she wanted to, work when she, could be away. And so ironically, she did own her own business, and it was something that I never, as a child, I was probably more embarrassed about. But then as an adult, I think it really did inspire me.
I was wondering if you were going to say that or not, because when I was thinking about it too, I was like, well, dang. Well, yeah, because then it's just like the same thing where it's like you don't really realize it, but like that motivation does come from like somewhere, or like having an experience or seeing somebody else do it or whatever. And then, I mean, she did. She had 5 kids, and she was always working all the time.
It ties a lot into what we talked about on the couple episodes previously about just being a product of your environment, right? When you're growing up, and how all these different things that are in that environment can influence you, whether you even realize it or not.
Exactly.
And it makes a huge difference. And I think that also ties to it can be why people don't also understand a lot of things that can go on, like, and why they might stress over this or why they might struggle with this is because
you're conditioned a certain way.
Yeah, they experienced it, whether they even might realize it or not. So I think that's a really interesting point, like watching you and you saying that, looking back, it kind of just reassures that fact that is definitely something that influences each of us.
It does. And, not until, so then the next step with my career. So at 19 years old, 20 years old, I got hired or promoted from a clerical position to a kitchen and bath designer, and they started training me. I was still just a 9 to 5 employee. And I learned a lot, and I'm super grateful for that opportunity. But, there were definitely times where I remember, just shit happening. I was being late for work, and like all of a sudden, like you're stressed out, and I'm driving in. I was like, oh, I was supposed to be there, 20 minutes ago. And now I had to like explain myself, or, maybe even like tell a little fib or, something like, and then that stress was like even more stress. And, it's just, you were kind of like at somebody else's demand or, will.
Right.
And so I don't know that I was thinking at such a young age that I was going to, leave and start my own business at, again, such a young age. But shortly after I was promoted, the company sold and we got a new owner. And then within 2 short years, the new owner actually bankrupted the company.
I remember that. That's crazy.
Yeah. And so it was kind of like I got kicked out of the nest. I don't know if you've ever heard the term, you got to get kicked out of the nest to learn how to fly. But yeah, so then at 23, I started my own company because I really didn't have any other choice.
Like sink or swim. Yeah. It's like, I'm going to do this or I'm going to have to do something else.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit, if you wouldn't mind going into it, what made you decide to go with your business partner that you did, and how did like that conversation start, and like what made you like trust in that path for you at that time?
Well, that's a great question, and truly, so I was 23. The company I had worked for that was so exciting and had trained me to be where I was at just dissolved. It was just gone, just literally gone, and I didn't really know what to do. And I looked around at the other kitchen and bath design firms wondered if there was anybody that I really could see myself working for, and I really couldn't. I really had made a little bit of a name for myself in a small local circle of homeowners, and so I did have a couple of people that were, asking about me and wanting to, consider working with me directly, and so that's when I decided, if I'm going to do this, work this hard for somebody else, I'm going to work this hard for myself.
Amen.
And I started doing it out of my home, and it was really hard. Like, it was very easy for me to like go do laundry or go do dishes or
The distractions
of being at home and wanting to get stuff done at home. And so it just wasn't a very good work environment for me. And so there was another employee that worked at the same company, and she was actually an interior designer. So the differences were, like, my main focus were space planning and designing and selling cabinetry, countertops, sinks, faucets, appliances, things that go into the kitchen. And as an interior designer, her main focus was furniture and lamps and art and accessories and window treatment. So we both were in the design field, but still did some things that were very separate. But ironically, she was 10 years older than me. And even though I had 2 small children at home, she actually had 3 small, at the time she had 2 children at home. She was pregnant for her 3rd. And she didn't want to work quite as much as I did. Like, and her husband brought in a great income, and she didn't need to work as much as I did. We're opposite. Like, I had to make money. I had to, put food on the table. So we could never really figure out how to form a partnership, actually. But we decided to really basically become roommates. To find a brick and mortar place and rent an actual office space and later turn it into a showroom was quite a daunting task for somebody that's 23 years old, had 2 kids at home, plus a car payment, plus a mortgage, and all the bills that go along with it. So it was kind of a godsend that Renee wanted to, share a space with me. And so we found a building and we split the rent, and her business was always her business and my business was always my business. But we shared the rent, we shared the utilities, and that went on for 15 years, actually.
Wow.
You gotta love somebody if you have that to be
I was
long.
gonna say though, definitely that takes a lot of work on both sides and patience and getting.
Yeah, she was a
through
big
that.
part of my life for a long time. And I mean, I definitely always looked at her as somewhat of a business mentor as well. Again, her, being 10 years older than me and, having that much more work experience and experience working for other companies. She definitely made it, I think, easier. Anyways.
It was a good path for you at that time too.
It was a great opportunity. It was.
So then fast forward like the 15 years later, what inspired you to open your own showroom, state of the art, in downtown Petoskey that was like everything that you've ever dreamed of, and like what was some of your thought processes in that, because that had to have been like kind of terrifying, like at the same time. And so, like, what was that?
Yeah, so fast forwarding 15 years, there's a lot of things that you skip over when you fast forward that far in advance. But really, so Renee and I's relationship carried on as being roommates for 15 years, and what it really looked like is every 5 years we would sign a new lease, and then another 5 years would like blow by, and then we would sign another lease, and then another 5 years. And I remember at one juncture, just saying, okay, this is gonna be our last 5 years, like in this building, in this space, and to rewind back, like we in the 15 years we have remodeled so many showrooms and different phases of different showrooms, and we moved a couple times, and always like every 5 years we got a little bigger, a little better, a little bigger, a little better. But ultimately, like no hard feelings or anything to Renee, but I was always kind of in the background. Like it was always kind of her show, even though we were like 50-50 partners. Being a little bit younger, I had a little bit more to prove, I would say. And so I felt like a lot of times I did all the heavy lifting. Right. There was just, there's different things that you go through and different emotional struggles and such. But, really it was just me wanting to have a little more presence. And then ultimately just a bigger showroom, like you said, Jasmine, like the showroom of my dreams, right? Here I was at that point, looking at 40. I was getting ready to turn 40. And at that point, my kids were, almost raised and, into young adulthood of their own. And you just take a kind of a hard look at yourself. And I think you have to decide, you have to ask yourself, what do I want? Like if you want to get to the next step and you want those good vibrations to come back to you and you want to manifest something, you have to define it. Right? Like you can't just sit here and flounder and say, why aren't good things happening to me?
Why is throw something and hope it sticks?
Yeah.
You got to go after it.
You do. And I think you literally have to say, I want the best showroom in all of Northern Michigan. I want, the exclusive.
Which she has.
Yes, it is beautiful.
Yeah, so it was looking at, eking up on 40 years old and, looking at what the next step was, the next phase of my life. And so, I found this building on Main Street and I was like, there's no way. There's no way. But wouldn't that be cool?
It was when you first did the blueprints, I remember it was kind of like this is like the plan, but like we didn't, you know what I mean? Like it was like, and that's part of like the whole, like you said, manifesting, like it was like, this is everything that I want. And like, there was like part of that process, which is super cool. But yeah.
Yeah, that's where I started. It was just, okay, if I could have anything, what would it be?
Right.
And then it's like, okay, let's break that down. Let's kind of, what does that look like? And it was some dream building. And then it was, okay, I was like, 6 months later, that building's still available. Like, no way. Like somebody has to have that thing locked up by now.
Right.
And I was like, wow. So I called the landlord. I said, is it available? He said, yeah, it's still available. So I went and did a walkthrough and I'm like, okay. And then the next step was, what is it going to take to do this?
Right.
And then really just kind of looking at it. I mean, oh my God. I mean, my rent was going to quadruple, literally quadruple.
I was going to say, so like what were some fears like in that process of like taking that leap? And then also like, because you never know at that point, like you're making a big investment, you're doing all these things, but then on the flip side, your business has grown because of it. You have these full vignettes that you can showcase. You have your beautiful air cabinetry that you have. But like, what were some of like the fears, I guess, in doing that?
Just the same fear every day of owning your own business. I'm gonna fall on my face,
right?
I'm just literally gonna fail. Like, and then it's just at some point you decide, okay, well, what's the worst that could happen? I don't know. You just. For me, I think that's always been in the back of my mind. So much to really say about being an entrepreneur and owning your own business, going back to those early days. And, but yeah, I think you just have to say, what's the worst that could happen? And say, okay, if that did happen, am I going to be okay? Well, shit. Yeah, of course you're going to be okay. I mean, what am I going to do? I have to, I'm literally going to go file for bankruptcy and move in with my mom and sleep on her couch. Like, I mean, I'm still alive.
Yeah, that's true. That's very fair.
I mean, yeah, it's just you sometimes have to just like break it and say, oh my God, that would be embarrassing. I would be full of shame, but at least I tried.
Right.
Yeah.
Tried to go after what you wanted.
Yeah.
I think that's like a lot of people's problem. They let the fear of doing something it stalls them completely.
It can be crippling.
Yeah.
It can literally be crippling. And I think that's where you have to like, you have to take that fear and say, what is the possible worst that could happen?
Right.
And then start to break that down. It's like, I'm still going to be able to breathe.
Right.
I might not be able to show my face in town, but, I'll still be able to breathe.
But you'll be okay.
Yeah.
So then let's kind of switch gears a little bit. And I want to talk about like going back to the beginning journey. Like I know obviously like being a young mom was a motivator for you, but like for me, which we talked about the other day, is like competition is like a big thing or a big motivator for me, or like me having to prove myself or be the best that I could be. Like what were some motivators like in like your mental thought process that you had gone through, like either at the beginning times or whatever part on your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, well, I think that I probably gave you that. really can't. Competition is definitely, but, I will say, I do think whether people admit it or not, I think competitiveness is a drive for most people. I think it's just in our DNA. We're just, you look at sports and you think about what competition can do and really step up your game. So yeah, that was a big part of it. I think I mentioned there's quite a few kitchen and bath designers in our small area. So there is definitely a lot of competition. But my motivation really was probably the money. And the freedom. Truly. To be 20 minutes late for work some mornings and say that's okay. But not to sound lazy, because when you do start your own business, you do know that you do nothing but work all the time. And
it's the complete opposite. The complete opposite. People, don't let it fool you.
Yeah, you are the first one there every morning, and you are the last one to leave. And there's a lot that goes into it. You really pour your heart and soul into it.
I hate that quote. It's like, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. If you love what you do, you will work every day of your life as hard as you possibly can, and always trying to improve.
That's so true. Though.
Yeah, I can't stand when people say that. I'm like,
17, 18-hour days, which you wouldn't be doing that for anybody else.
No. But I think like our first year in business, I say we Designs by Dawn, because it's not just myself. I do have a good staff now, but that first year I was all by myself, and I think I had only one or two clients, and I think we sold like $100,000 that year. And, that was like, okay, we did it. We sold it. And then the next year we doubled it. The next year it was 200,000.
Right.
And then the year after that it was 400,000.
Right.
So like doubling every
year. Just every year, just
like
kept growing and kept
growing. And those
growing.
moments have to reassure you that
they do. Yeah. They do. But there's days you want to give up.
Right.
Oh my gosh. I remember probably the 100,000 and then the 200,000. It was somewhere between our sales being at 200,000 to 400,000, and mind you, that's not profit. I'm not making not making that much money. That's just what our sales were, and and I thought I did everything right. I had my I had a CPA, I had people helping me get my taxes straight. But, all of a sudden, I had this huge, come April, I had this huge tax liability of like surplus $40,000. Here I'm 23 years old. I can, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. Like, back then it's like, okay, well, we can't pay the electricity this month, but, so then you fall 2 months behind on the electricity, but then you still keep paying the mortgage because that affects your credit more than anything. And then, so it's just constantly juggling the bills. And, all of a sudden I have my tax man telling me I owe $40,000 to the state. I'm like, or to the government. And I was like, I didn't know. Thank God. So I actually, backing up to I was 20 and a half, not quite 21 years old. And I bought a house. Like, now, mind you, it was a very modest house and, a smaller town. And, but I had a house. And so when I had that huge tax liability pop up, I was able to refinance my house, pull some equity out of the home, and actually pay the tax.
Oh my goodness.
Which, at that time is like right there, like, you just want to give up.
Right.
You literally just want to give up.
This is it.
And why am I working so hard?
And now I just doubled my mortgage. Now my mortgage payment is, a lot more than what it was before. So there's a lot that you put, but I wanted to be a good steward of my business. And I felt, embarrassed and ashamed that I didn't stay on top of the taxes enough for it to get up that high where it was something that it was so like insurmountable.
Right.
But I think it's also important for anybody that's listening too, like taxes are a huge part of being an entrepreneur and like making sure that you are setting yourself up correctly. Cause like it can be terrifying, especially like if you are a content creator or if you're doing like some of these newer things like trading crypto, whatever it is, like if you don't stay on top of that, like it is a scary thing and you will have to pay that money back in and you're not thinking about it as the year goes on, but like, then
no one likes the IRS.
April, yeah, it's like, that's terrifying. And honestly, in today's world, most people don't have the luxury of buying a home at such a young age. Like rates are really high, like inflation's really high. There's not a lot of inventory.
Banks are saying no.
Right. So like it's like I don't even own my home. We don't own our own home.
No.
So like you almost do.
Not quite.
But it's like the same thing though, where it's like you just don't have that. Like that was almost like a luxury in that way, that you had that out and you could take care of it with that. Because it's like some people now in today's world, like that might not be an option.
Right. And at that point, so the other thing is that I had never, in the history of owning the business, I've never had to take out a commercial loan.
Mm-hmm.
I was always able just start small and then build and build and build.
And keep investing into your business with the money that you're making.
Yeah, I was.
I think that's a huge part of it too, is that you keep investing back into your business.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what happens with a lot of people is they get lost in that, and then it's just like, I'm going to take the money, or I'm going to get this here and get this there. And it's like, you lose that.
Well, and different industries can be different, but things for me were so unstable.
Right.
Like it wasn't like I just hit the ground running and was this wonderful designer. Like one time I fucked a kitchen up so bad, I had to pay $8,000 for these people to have a kitchen by the end of the day.
Mistakes.
Because you can't just oh, I'm sorry, I ordered that all wrong. I guess you're screwed. No, I had to make it right.
Yep.
I had to dig into my pocket and my savings and really, literally, I had to pay over $8,000 for these lovely people to hire me to do their kitchen.
With a smile on my face.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's days you want to give up. There's days and nobody really cares what you're doing. I'm sorry, but your family, your spouse, maybe a few good friends, but you're on your own.
I
You are
stand
on your
it.
own, and that's hard. I mean, you've gotta be strong, and you've got to love yourself. You got to give yourself a lot of love,
right?
When you make those little mistakes, I mean, my gosh, my kids were young enough to where they didn't know what was going on, but I would hate to have been, the person in my life, because I was a bear. Are you kidding me?
But it's just all about learning and growing too. And you didn't give up, and then you were persistent, and you did, you made it right with your clients, which makes it right with your business and your relationship. And it's that those are the kind of hard moments.
It's okay if you make a mistake, but it's how you fix that mistake.
Yeah. I mean, the same thing. We had one client that will stick out to me forever and ever, Robert Franklin. And he and it was I don't remember, I forget what we did, a logo design and a branding design, and he wasn't very communicative, and we kind of let him fall through the cracks, and I'll be completely honest, it was 2 weeks and we didn't talk to him, and he called me and he ripped my ass a new one. And all I could say was, you know what? You are so right. And I am so sorry. And I cried for a couple minutes afterwards. And we gave him part of a refund. And that's just we wanted to make it so right with him. But it's you never forget that moment. And then you always learn from it and grow from it. But it was definitely one of those moments for us that it was oh, man.
Oh, my most recent one, I messed up that video. We had a shoot that we did, and we had everybody show up. There were 6 employees involved. It was catered food. I mean, it was set up. We had a theme. I mean, we had it staged. It was a whole thing compared to some of the content shoots that we do. And I had a shot on the camera, and it was perfect. And I got back here to upload it, and I wasn't paying attention, and I completely cleared it off of the SD card. Gone. It was completely gone.
She called
it's
me
not in the trash.
Panic.
And Garrett was sitting across from me, and he was just what's wrong? And I'm we're gonna have to fix this. So, and I had to call him and be I'm so sorry. This was completely my mistake, and this doesn't happen. And I just had to own it, and I had to make up for it. And I luckily was able to use some of the footage that we had to make it work. But it's you have to do those things. That's how you handle it and want to make it right.
And I think that's something too that we've learned from you is this, and you just always taking that responsibility. I remember when I worked for you, you were always if you fuck up, you need to take responsibility for it. People don't like people that are pointing the fingers or
accountability.
Right. Yeah. But if you say that you messed up and you're going to make it right, that just goes way further.
That's what we call a healthy dose of humble pie.
Right. I always heard that when I was waitressing. It's kind of the customer is always right.
Yes.
But it's almost when they're don't blame them if there's something wrong with their dish, or if there's something that doesn't taste right, or it's always, that's my fault. Or don't instantly blame the kitchen.
Right.
It's kind of you take that on. It's I'm so sorry, that is my mistake. And you're instantly having that connection where you're going to take responsibility and make it right. And I that's always bled into other things.
It just makes them feel so much better. And it's it's an easier way to fix it versus saying, I'm sorry, sorry about your luck, or blaming somebody else.
Accountability is definitely something that has gone more to the wayside in today's I don't know, just today.
And not that the customer's always right. I just want to note that.
No, but like how often do people really take accountability? So I definitely think that's an attribute that is, few and far between. Right. And I think if I could save anything that's super important for, being an entrepreneur, it's, having that accountability and taking accountability. Just one small example, I have a cabinet line that we represent. It's a good cabinet line. It really is. It's more entry level for us. It's not a high end cabinet line, but you go online and it's a national. I mean, this is a big company, brand, but you go online, they have really bad reviews, and the reviews are all things that for me as experienced in the industry, they're 100% mistakes that the designer has made and turn around and pointed fingers
at the
cabinet company. Right. Instead of this designer saying, oh, I ordered that cabinet wrong. Let me get you the right cabinet. Right. Now I've got a homeowner on there like blasting this cabinet company saying, they make garbage cabinets or something.
I can see that being a big,
So, I mean, I don't know.
That's a perfect example. Yeah.
All right. So tell us a little bit, again, going back to like either the beginning of your entrepreneurial like journey or like even now, like do you have any mentors? Like for us, we like Gary, you know how much we love like Gary Vee or somebody like that. Is there somebody that ever stood out to you?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. So funny. I always joke about, and the industry I think hopefully jokes about it. I'm not the only one, but we call it the case study. Copy and steal everything.
Love it.
Totally. So, I mean, truly, there are some kitchen designers that from day one, from local to, national, that I have just always adored. Probably selfishly, I will say, more so than actually loving their design work, I love how like notoriously famous they are in the industry. And that's where I think I'm like, oh, I like your designs. I think I could do better, but man, I wish I could be as cool as you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you're striving towards that direction.
I think you're on your way there.
I'm like, we just got to make you famous and then you're good.
Yeah. I definitely think I want to be known for like the ultimate luxury, luxury home, luxury kitchen. But it didn't start that way. I mean, I think I've always like saw them, in my horizon, like, oh, wouldn't it be cool? Like, that's my idol. You know, like if I could be that person, if I could do as good as they do.
Right.
What about anybody like locally or anybody that that was like tooting your horn or like somebody that has been like really pushing you in that direction, or like when you did have those shitty moments, like is there anybody that like stands out to you that was like, no, Dawn, you got to keep going, or
like my biggest fan? Yeah, gal, I hate to like exclude anybody, and if there's anybody that you could think of that you just remember, that please let me know. But I mean, nobody gives a shit what you're doing.
Yeah,
nobody. I mean, really I think I hate to say that. I mean, I will say that I have had great following from, a couple local architects that have always referred me, a couple good builders. But, the thing that always really just kind of irks me is like there's a couple bigger builders in the area that, sometimes you've just done a really great job for, but they still don't refer you.
Yep.
Or, like the job I was talking about earlier, where I had to ultimately spend $8,000 to make the job right. There's nobody there patting you on the back at the end of the day saying, hey, you did the right thing.
Yep.
But ultimately, I think it, if you do a good job, they tell 10 people. You do a bad job, they tell 100 people.
Yep.
Right. So, I mean, you can't not do a good job no matter what. Like you might not be getting the pat on the back or the atta girl, but you're definitely getting a lot further ahead than all those negative things that could be said about you as a small business owner.
Right.
No, that makes sense. I think too, maybe that just goes to show how important it is to be so confident in yourself, because it is true. Like, I mean, it's not like other than like you or like our family, you know what I mean? Like we don't have people that are like, you guys are doing so great, or like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like you feel like you
have to be, right?
There's no gratitude.
No, it's almost like this delusional optimism that you're going to be successful, that you are who you're, that imposter syndrome won't kick in, that you don't let that happen. And it's like, I deserve to be here in this space.
Or like the
Just
fact
remember
that we have each other, and like you and Renee did have each other too for a while. So it's like if you guys won together, like that was a big win. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So like being able to share that, I guess, or like go through that experience together. But it is kind of like you're out here all alone.
It is. It really is. It really is. And those are the times sometimes when you really start to think about that, you almost want to give up. You know, you're like, there's no end in sight. I'm working my ass off. You know, the money hasn't quite come yet. And it takes a while. I mean, you know, I love how much you support me and you say, you know, I'm close to being famous and I'm very successful. But, you know, I've been working at this for a long time. It took me a long time to get here. You know, I guess just to back up to, you know, the question that you asked earlier, you know, I remember, like I said, that first year in sales, I think we did right around 100,000 and then 200,000 and then 400,000. And then by 2009, we hit $1 million. Woo! We sold $1 million. We didn't make $1 million.
Right.
We sold $1 million. I mean, that was, you know, we had become $1 million company. It was very exciting. Very exciting. It was probably more in 2007 or 8 because that was actually when the recession kind of hit. I was just about to say that's
a crazy time to be successful too.
It was. And also it was like the 5th year we were in business. So the statistic is like, you know, all small new businesses fail within the first 5 years. Yeah. So in our 5th year, we hit $1 million and it was in the middle of a recession. And that was a lot to like celebrate. And the thing was, you know, Renee's business was separate. So even though Designs by Dawn did $1 million, you know, Renee Guthrie Design didn't necessarily do $1 million. So, you know, those are kind of like little wins. Sometimes you had to like keep to yourself too, because you couldn't really be like braggadocious or, you know, then all of a sudden she's feeling bad because she didn't do that much. Or if she did more than me 1 year in sales, then I was feeling bad that I wasn't. But ultimately we plateaued. So we hit the $1 million sales and then we stayed there. We like doubled, hit $1 million, then we stayed there for about 5 years.
Well, they say it's the hardest. So they say from going from 100,000 to $1 million is like so hard, but they say, from that point on, it is like a thing, like going from 1 million to 7 figures or like breaking that 1 million mark is like for like just like for any business across the board. They say that
work
is like harder than building from the 100,000 to the $1 million.
And that was a big motivator to get the new showroom. Back to the question that you asked earlier. You know, we had plateaued and it was like, okay, you know, am I going to be happy with, you know, just being $1 million company? And the answer was no. No. So it was like, what's the next step? So at that point, you know, looking at 40, I'd owned my own business for, you know, 15 years up until that point and wanting to, you know, jump out, took out a huge commercial loan. First time in my life going into commercial debt. You know, still had the mortgage, still had the car, but, you know, still had all my own personal, you know, obligations. And then, you know, jumped into a huge commercial loan and built out this beautiful showroom. Put in nothing but the ultimate high-end everything. And one thing that people don't quite understand is when you're in the business, like, you don't get anything for free. You want to buy a sample, you still have to pay for it. So it wasn't like my suppliers were giving me free countertops or free backsplashes or free floor covering. You know, we had to pay for all of that. But so jumped into a huge commercial loan, quadrupled my rent at work, and
but what did that do to your revenue?
5 years later, it was absolutely the right thing to do. I mean, because we showed nothing but high end in the showroom, we started selling nothing but high end. And so our sales easily that first year went from 1 million to 2 million. And then I'm happy to say 2 million to 3 million. So so now we're a $3 million company. Thank you. Thank you.
And you're going to have to keep doing different things like within the showroom to keep that like progressing too.
Yeah. What is the next 5 years?
Oh God, you know, and so that's so funny because my whole life, I have always been able to set a goal, accomplish it, set another goal, accomplish it. And that's just kind of how I've grown and how I have kind of, as we, you know, say, manifested things to myself. But ever since I got into that showroom, I haven't set the next goal. So I really am like, okay, Dawn, what's the next big thing? And I think once I, you know, focus on that and lock that in, it'll be.
I know what it is.
Laser focused.
I know what it is. Monetizing on YouTube.
Yeah.
And being like more like of a public figure for you?
I also think I just have a tremendous amount of knowledge to share.
Yeah, you have a lot of value to bring in. It's just a matter of getting it in front of people.
I think when you have been doing something for 20 years and you're a professional in your industry for 20 years, I remember, so back when I told you I first got hired at Puffs, and my manager was like in his early 60s. I remember him saying, I have forgotten more about kitchen and bath design than you'll ever know, or something like that. And now I was like, oh God, I kind of feel the same way.
Well, but you've done presentations from the college. You've done big presentations. I can't think of all of them, but you have done public speaking.
Yeah, in 2012, I was actually the guest speaker for our national conference in Las Vegas.
That's crazy.
And then again in Chicago in 2014.
What was that like?
It was based on a continuing educational unit, and I was speaking about outdoor kitchen design. So the first year I crushed it, and that was out in Las Vegas, and that was at the National Kitchen and Bath Show 2012, like I said. And the study guides. So the National Kitchen and Bath Association has their team of educators that interviewed with me, took my words out of that interview and created a whole class around everything that I said.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I studied it and I studied it and I studied it because it was all PowerPoint presentations with notes upon notes upon notes upon notes. And I studied it so well, I nailed it. But then 2 years later, I didn't study as hard. And I thought this is going to be easy.
To flow.
And I kind of bombed it a little because I didn't study as hard. And so I was like, flipping through the notes and, fumbled a little bit in front of everybody at the speakerphone. But
so has that hindered you from doing more of that kind of stuff?
Well, I haven't been invited back.
Well, we need to make some phone calls. Because I do think you have a
justice needs to be served. We need to get a redo.
Well, again, that's kind of a good lesson to learn,
right?
Or to be learned. You got to put your heart and soul in it.
Yeah. Even if you're a professional and your shit, if you
think you're the best, there's always room for improvement.
Yeah. And taking that extra time to study or whatever. I'm not so good at public speaking, but I feel
me neither. I made myself take public speaking in college to kind of be like,
push
I'm gonna
yourself.
Get over it. I was one of them weirdos. Yep. What was I thinking?
I was surprised. She's like, so I have a public speaking class. I'm like, huh? What? You're crazy.
I'll stay away.
We recently just got asked to speak at the college in September for the women in
Connecting
business.
Women in
Connecting
Business.
Women in Business.
Okay, good.
So we said yes.
Yeah, we said
yes.
So that's like nerve wracking because you know all this knowledge and you're working hard and we're young. We're still very new in our entrepreneurial journey, but it's like you do learn your expertise and you're slowly becoming a professional. And sometimes it's hard. You're like, are they talking to me?
Or they're looking at us like we're supposed to.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm advising. I deserve to be here and what I have to say has merit and I can bring value. And it's remembering that. But it's it's scary.
Well, we have many months to prepare. So we need to make sure that we do that and it will be great.
Yeah, one thing I wish I could do more. I mean, I do have a whole deep story about, getting pregnant for you on the summer break between my freshman year of high school and my sophomore year of high school and how, that really, I feel like I could speak more to young, teen moms and single moms. And I don't really know the message I want to get across necessarily, but, I do feel like as far as giving back and, maybe being a speaker at that point and, doing a little.
I think that's just such a big part of your story, though, because it's you were a mompreneur before mompreneur was even a thing.
It shaped the course of your life, kind of, and it almost made you I have to be successful.
It did.
You didn't have an option because you had to be successful for them.
No, yeah. I mean, that was something, early on in the pregnancy. And, of course, as, I didn't want to go back to high school and be, the school slut or be shamed. And I had, so much in my mind about how, I was going to be treated differently or I was going to be the talk of everybody's gossip, and I thought about terminating the pregnancy and,
well, thank goodness you didn't.
Yeah, well, that was at the
reality.
That was at the time the option that I had, and I said no. I'm not going to, I'm going to, either, I'm going to carry the pregnancy through and full term, and I'm going to, give it up for adoption. I know it was a girl at the time, and, let somebody else raise a baby, or I'm going to do the best damn job I can do, and that was a decision I made right then and there. And I will say, I really always did try to, do the best damn job I could do.
Yeah.
And how hard was it too, I guess, like being young and being in school and like having your child and like all your friends are going out, right? And they're all like living their lives and doing all these things, and like you're starting like your adult life.
Yeah, and fortunately for me,
married. You were married too. Yep.
I got married right after I graduated high school.
Yep.
But yeah, I actually switched schools, so that was a little bit easier for me. And then I, went from Lansing to Petoskey, and I didn't know anybody at Petoskey,
right?
And nobody knew that I had a baby at home, unless maybe the small handful of people that knew me,
right?
But really, I went to school, I went to classes, I did my homework, and I got the hell out of there, and I went to work. So that was a little bit easier than like staying in Lansing. I think that would have been a lot harder for me. And at the time, we had this wonderful. It was an alternative high school. It was a parenting program for pregnant teenagers. And I went there for a year. But I had gotten pregnant so early on in my high school career that I still had 3 years of high school left.
Right.
So 1 year I went to the parenting program. And then the next year I went to my junior year at Petoskey Public Schools. And the state of Michigan has a law that every high school student must attend high school for 8 semesters, which equals 4 years. But I petitioned the state of Michigan to ask them if I could graduate after 7 semesters, and they approved it. So I actually finished high school a semester early. I finished in right around Christmas break, December, January. And then was able to work full-time for the next 6 months. And then I went back in end of May, early June, and actually walked at, high school commencement with my class. But, yeah.
I was there.
I know.
You were there. You were too at the time.
We have pictures to
Can we
prove
pop
it.
the photo on?
Yeah,
Can we pop the photo on here somewhere?
They're cute
for them to
photos.
see?
They're cute.
Yeah.
But what I think that is just going to be or will be at some point a big part of your journey, because that is such a story that a lot of people can resonate with. Like, it doesn't matter, like, back then, today, like, there are younger girls that are getting pregnant and that have to go through this. And, like, it's, like, going through that motion of, like, do I drop out? Do I have an abortion? And everybody's story is different. Everybody's choices are different. But, like, you just are a testament that you can make it all happen and you can push through. And like you didn't have a whole lot, like you had grandma to rely on, but you didn't have like a whole support system by any means.
You didn't have a whole deck of cards going into it.
So it was like, and she was working too. So you know what I mean? So it's like you only had so much, like you didn't have anything to fall back on or somebody who could fix all your problems for you kind of thing. So it's definitely like a huge thing that you pushed through that. And then now today, like you have 2 kids that are grown and that you're very successful. And like there is a path for each person, and that is something that I think can inspire a lot of people.
I'd like to. I do feel like I do have some of it a calling for that. I haven't actually done it yet. I don't even know what a seminar or a public speaking.
You could write a book. I think writing a book for you, I think that would be something that's like super cool. And just even going back to like building a personal brand or audience, which we talked about in one of our last podcasts, but it's so powerful these days. Like there's so many people that you can help with your story and build that audience. And you could write a book, and there's so many different like publicity things that you could do even just outside of kitchen and bath. Like you have a huge story that could motivate a lot of people, or if they're struggling and they're going through it right now and they read your story or hear your story, like that could spark something.
It's like that's what we always talk about when we're talking, like when we do our content shoots and we're saying like finding points of connection with your audience. It's like these are your points of connection. This is how you bring value in what's happened in your life and through your experiences.
Yeah, that's a really great point that I didn't necessarily, think about.
Right. And if you change one, we always live in the mindset, if we can change one person, if one person listens to this podcast, if there's one girl out there that's listening to this and hears your story and it's like breathing a little easier because she knows it's going to be okay, and that's worth it.
It is. Or even, and I don't mean to dwell on this so much, but even just maybe one person that's doing it right now. They're in the weeds and they're trouncing through and they want to give up and there's no end in sight, and there's like,
just keep going.
Just keep going.
It's a huge point to make it know it's not glamorous. It's not always rainbows and sunshine. And there's some days that are hard and there's tears. And
there probably is more hard days than not, to be honest. Like they're really, like,
I would say so.
Like, and then it's like those small pivotal like moments just make it all worth it. or like when you slowly reach your goals, or when something like amazing happens, or whatever it is with whatever industry you're in. But yeah, I think that's a really good point too.
And reminding ourselves to kind of celebrate the little things.
Or just like if you're at that point of giving up, just give it 6 more months, right? Just give it 6 more months, look at it again in 6 months and see how far you've come, and say, okay, can I do that again in the next 6 months?
Right.
And, really just stick with it and celebrate those little wins, like you said. Yeah.
So a couple things. I want to talk just for like a second on, because I think this is important for young entrepreneurs or people that are just getting started. We touched on it on like a couple podcasts ago, but what was that process like, gaining the trust of new clients when you first started, because you were so young? Because that's something that I feel like that we really have to like prove ourselves.
I think we still do.
Yeah, and honestly, there's no easy way. There's no trick. You just have to stick with it. And now I'm at this point where I'm 45 years old, and people just trust. They do. But when you're that young, they don't. I mean, no matter what. And it kind of rolls into being such a young mom. So ironically, if you could imagine, by the time I was 21, you were in kindergarten.
Crazy.
So, here I am, this 21-year-old walking her, 5-year-old into kindergarten with, all these other moms that are, late 30s, 40s, some of them in their early 50s even,
Yeah.
And, I always felt like I had something to prove, or I had, I always try to make myself look older. I kind of wore like, a little bit more older haircuts. I always had like a, scarf around my neck and like red lipstick and big earrings and just.
Do you think you were emulating those women that you said that kind of inspires you with those first shows? It's like those first few people that you were really like, this is something that I kind of
Absolutely. I was emulating them. That's a really good point. Yeah. And I was just always trying to make myself look older because I wanted people to take me seriously.
Right.
And so, same thing at work. Like I was always trying to make myself look older. I was always trying to get people to take me seriously. And you had to work really hard for it.
If I look the part, they're going to be able to.
I can play that too. Is like, whereas like, we not that we don't wear blazers and stuff anymore, but there was like in year 2 for us, like we were getting dressed up to the miles like every single day to like,
which I love. I love dressing up, but like, this is me.
But yeah, like sometimes you just want to put a hoodie and a hat on and like be yourself too. So it's like,
I think a lot of that, you guys, unfortunately just comes with age,
right?
Really, like I remember, being so young and people, you present a kitchen design to them and they're picking apart every detail.
Yep.
They want to know the crown molding detail and the light rail molding detail and the toe kick detail. Right now, I couldn't tell you the last time somebody asked me, what is my crown molding going to look like?
Right.
But I was your age, you know what I mean? Those were just like, they were like just making sure you knew your shit.
Right.
They want to make sure you know what you're talking about. And I don't know that there's any way to overcome that other than to just, just continue to be professional and continue to, do what you guys do because, you're in a little bit different industry too, where it is newer to people. Like there's not a lot of history or past to it. Where, when I was 23 and trying to sell, a $50,000 cabinet package, the chances are that those clients had done it before or had heard about their parents doing it before or had witnessed their friends doing it before. So, they're like, oh, well, don't forget to ask about this. And, and another thing is, I don't know quite how this can relate to you, but what I have found with my clients is if we present a preliminary design, and let's say the clients really like it, like when you present it to them, they love it. But then, like, they go away and they come back and they're just kind of lukewarm about it. And you're like, well, what happened? Well, they showed the design to their family, their friends, their neighbors, and they now all of a sudden have everybody's opinion,
so many different,
which has like polluted their
excitement
and their ability to make a decision.
Right.
Gotcha.
And so sometimes it's like and I don't. Sometimes you gotta they gotta get them to sign when they're excited, right? This is it. You're excited. What's there to think about? Let's do this. Let's order this today. And
I think that's also just part of like being a better entrepreneur and knowing like those moments where it's like if you are selling or you are doing something where like you have to like take advantage of that in that moment. Or I mean, this kind of is a little bit the similar but different. But like we've had clients that like will price gouge us, and it reflects on like I think our age or like different things along those lines. But like the moment that we like set our pricing and we haven't looked back or we're not doing all the budget matching and all the different things, like it kind of like makes us feel good. And then when we are selling, we know that we can't like give back from that, I guess, which
Right.
is kind of
standing
similar, but a
behind
little
your
different.
price. Yeah.
And just knowing your value too.
You do, because I will say that you get what you pay for, right? And if they
Right.
were able to whittle you down, where does it stop?
Right.
But it's got to have boundaries,
Yep.
and that's hard too, because there's also like the art of negotiation, which I don't quite understand, but there's just some people that always are going to barter, and that's hard.
Yeah.
And I will say that the older I get, the less and less and less of that I see. I used to have that a lot more, like, oh, well, can we get a discount? Can we get a discount?
It's like cuts into your profits, and then
it
it's like,
devaluizes you.
Right. They still want the same thing they're getting. They just want it for like half the price.
Which I think just goes back to the whole, like, if you are like a newer entrepreneur, the fact that if you are young, you will deal with like these types of things. And I think that
You
takes
will,
time.
and I don't want to say you want to turn those clients away necessarily, because that probably wouldn't be good advice. But also, it's kind of like an old adage of relationship advice too. Like, if you're spending all the time with the wrong ones, what opportunities are you missing with the right ones, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
maybe look at that for as clients, not just a relationship advice. But
Right. Because it is, I think we always talk about how with our clients and when choosing a brand that we're going to partner with, it's important that we stand behind them and that we fully support that brand.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes the same way for you and your clients. It's like it's a marriage almost between you two.
Well, and if somebody has whittled my profit down
Right.
to a point that I'm kind of just like ho-hum or lukewarm
Right.
about working on the project,
Right.
my excitement's gone.
And
right?
it's like a respect
Motivation.
thing,
The
Yeah.
too.
motivation's gone. My excitement's
Right.
gone. Where it's like, okay, like this is the 5th time I'm doing the exact same thing, and now
Right.
I'm getting resentment.
Right.
Whereas I should still be always excited about it, right?
Right.
Like you're saying, when you choose to partner with those people, you always want to be
Right.
excited because you're choosing to represent them because you feel like you would do a really good job for them.
Right.
But if they suck all your fun and excitement out of it and
Right.
ask you to reduce your amount of profit, then you
Right.
lose motivation to work on
Which
it.
is
And
a
do
good
you
one.
lose an opportunity with a better client because you're putting all this energy into
Right.
something that
Yeah,
maybe isn't the best fit?
You've got a time sucker when
Right.
yeah.
Which, like you said, though, too, like money is a motivator.
Right.
Like, I mean, and that's just being frank. Like,
That
if you're
is
an
what it is, what it
entrepreneur,
is.
like you are, like you're wanting to create your own life, create your own schedule, go on your own path. Maybe you're not so good at being told what to do. I hate being told what to do, but like
Same.
money is a motivator. You know what I mean? So like it does suck when you're in those moments because unfortunately, it can motivate you a lot more to be excited to do something. And then if somebody does price gouge you, then you do feel devalued and all of those good things.
I think being motivated by money is fine. I think it comes down to like your value, you as a person, right? It's like, why do you want that money?
And it's not like
life are
you're
you
trying
building?
to like stick it to them to the point where you're like, oh, I'm gonna get this one job and I'm gonna retire off of it.
Right,
No,
exactly.
it's like this is the industry standard. This is the going rate, and this is what I deserve.
Right.
Knowing your value.
Setting your respect as a professional. Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of things. Well, do you have? I know we touched on like your 5-year goal, your 5-year plan, which we got to work on,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But like, have you like? Because for us, like doing like the manifesting journals and like daily affirmations and stuff, which I think that you've done more like just naturally,
Right.
or like what kind of process does that look like for you, or do you have you written down your goals? And
I
then
do.
You, like look back
I do, and those. So the goals that I have accomplished are goals that I have written down, read to myself, reread to myself. Couple months go by, like realigned. Like I will even. So one of the little exercises that I like to do. Is I take a notebook and I, the middle goal, hopefully you can like sum it down to just a couple words.
Right.
And I just put it in the middle of the piece of paper with a pen and I circle it and circle it and circle it and circle it. And then I branch off and I write all these other words, and all these other words around it are like little spider legs going to things that are like associate words or actions or motivations that all lead back to that center goal. But it's having that center goal in the center of the paper and circling it, circling it, and circling it, and focusing on it, and then having all these outstretched, outlying, assimilated.
That's gonna like align you with
words.
that.
Yeah.
Now, did you
Yeah,
learn
so
that
that's-
from somebody?
I
or-
did. My
Okay.
Aunt Lisa.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah.
Shout out Aunt Lisa.
Shout out to Aunt Lisa. Yeah. She's definitely the the mentor for us, I would think, with manifestation and good vibes and not putting negative things out into the energy or negative energy out into the universe. And
That's crazy.
Yeah, she's always said, bad things, we just don't even why would you say that?
Right.
Don't even put that out there.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, it's so true though. And I think too, because I always wondered that, like, what was maybe like your process? Because it is such a pattern to success of actually writing down your goals, and then the fact that you spoke them into existence with yourself too, because it's like writing down your goals is one step, but then the fact that if you can speak it into existence, like our words have so much power as well.
Yeah.
So like all of that together, which that's
well, and I think so inside of our own heads, we can all have a lot of thoughts, which sometimes a thought comes and goes before it's even like completed, right? So if you actually like write it down, you actually have to complete the sentence or the paragraph, right? Where it's not just a fleeting thought. Or I use the word like floundering, like we're all out there kind of just like floundering, like, oh, what do I want? It's like, tell the universe what you want.
Yeah, what do you want?
I want, or ask yourself, what do I want?
Yeah.
And I feel like with the new studio and, finally, finding the love of my life and, marrying this amazing man that treats me so well, both of those things are things that I've made, and my kids doing so well, those are things that I have manifested for so long. I said, dear God, I just want my kids to, be healthy and be happy and do well for themselves. And, those are things I've said out loud every day. And now I've got to find the next thing. What do I want to start talking about?
Yeah.
And I actually do have a sheet of paper. It's taped to the wall on my backsplash at my desk. And in the middle of it, it's 100M. $100 million.
Let's go.
So, and I have it circled. I have it circled, and I have little out, branches of some of them are, doing consultation. One of them is writing a book. One of them is, doing nothing but ultimate high-end luxury, sales. So, I already have all those outstretched legs and, 100 millions in the middle. So
we need to have like a manifesting night or like a manifesting club.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so now we're gonna switch gears into like, not to be negative, but I think there's a lot to learn from like a few different things. Like maybe what has been like your biggest mistake or your biggest pitfall. There probably has been many times where you have, but like one that stands out super crazy to you. If you want to touch on that. And then also like, what are some sacrifices that you've had to make as an entrepreneur, especially as a mompreneur, young entrepreneur, that like maybe have made you put yourself in a not so good mental state, but like, again, the persistence and the consistency of working on yourself. Obviously it all works out, but.
Yeah. So I would say, it's a 3-part question.
I know, I'm sorry. So yeah, biggest mistakes biggest.
Yeah. So starting back at the beginning, I would definitely say, my biggest mistake is, that kitchen that I think I told you, cost me $8,000 to fix it and make it right. But that wasn't the only one. I mean, there were things throughout my, history where, we've ordered something wrong and it's, cost thousands of dollars to correct it and make it right. And that's really hard. I mean, that's really hard, admitting that you were wrong, number one. But also, unfortunately, it has, it's killed a few relationships. There's definitely, like I said, some builders out there that, even though, like you said, Callie, it's maybe not that you made the mistake, it's how you handled it and, how you, and so I have always, stuck with it. I've really stuck with it to the end, as painful as it is to, eat humble pie and apologize and say you made a mistake. And, even though you made it right, some people just never give you a second shot.
Yeah.
Right.
They just don't. And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. But
I also think it's a realistic thing to remember is that you can, to not let everybody's outside opinion always affect you, is that you can be the most successful. It's like the saying with the peaches. So you can be the juiciest peach in the stand and someone's going to walk by and still not like peaches.
Yeah.
So it's just sticking with it.
Yeah. And that's hard. That's for me because it's, it seems like a point of rejection.
Right.
We're all emotional beings. At the end of the day, I get kind of emotional about it. It's like, oh man, like, wish they'd give me another shot. I had, one builder tell me, just 5 short years ago that, when something goes wrong, I punt. It was like a football adage. And, so when you punt, you kick it off to the other team and, see what they can do with it. And, I definitely, do rely on other subcontractors a lot. I rely on electricians.
Well, you guys
plumbers.
all work together so closely that it's like it is a team effort.
It is. It is. And maybe sometimes in the past, maybe I've relied too much on other people or, maybe not stepped up to the plate as much as I would like to think I have. But, you can really pick it apart and say, oh, I did that wrong and I did that wrong. But honestly, like I'm still learning, every day we're learning. Every day I'm still a student and, that's never going to change. And so I always just want to be better and do better. And, like the fame and the fortune is exciting and that's what we're talking about. But at the end of the day, I truly do feel like I help people.
Yeah.
We're helping them with their homes. A lot of the clients that we have are professionals and they, they're either doctors or lawyers or, wealth management people and they don't know how to design their home. They don't know how to, get to the finish line of what they're looking for. So, we'll just continue to do better and continue to do our best and grow. But yeah, that's probably the hardest part is just, realizing, the mistakes that we've made. And boy, we've had some doozies.
You can dwell on them or you can move on. And then at the same point, like same thing like we've talked about a couple times, but it's like you are helping people in a way, but if you do not necessarily, if something ever falls through, it was meant to be, I guess is what I was going to say. So like if that builder was holding that grudge against you from that one time that you fucked up or whatever, it's like, okay, well maybe that relationship isn't the relationship for you.
It wouldn't have brought you a lot.
Yeah. And like you can dwell on it or you can keep going and you can learn from your mistake and move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the second part of the question, Jasmine?
So now we want to talk about like some sacrifices that you had to make as a young entrepreneur or just in general as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely, like, I don't want to say that I didn't have much of a social life because, my mom was really good when you guys were little, that, she did take you on the weekends and I was able to like go out and have a few drinks and blow off some steam, and I did do that, I was young and it was probably very therapeutic for me to blow off that steam.
For sure.
Right.
But, like the sacrifices I've made, there's been a lot. I mean, really, like and I don't want to have like a pity party or anything for sure. But I mean, still to this day, like if I have a deadline, like I'm working, like I'm working late and, not really always just available to have so much fun. So yeah, I would definitely say the hours that you put in are a sacrifice.
But you're such a free spirit too. So like, and I think that's just something to note, like knowing the kind of person that you are, because like for you having that time to like let go and let loose and like to be yourself and like that, like all that, I think that makes you like happy. You know what I mean? So it's like I think so then that would be like the biggest sacrifice is like you've had to let go of like those times that you could go do that, or you're like you said not available, or maybe you don't get to go hang out with your husband as much as you want, or like things like that. But I think it's also knowing yourself and knowing like that certain things make you happy, but you might have to sacrifice them a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And then just back to like my biggest downfall, one thing when you were asking the question that I thought of has probably been a hard learning curve is I will say that I have found that sometimes I can be overconfident. Like what I mean by that is I've had clients in the past that have come to me and have said, oh gosh, I have this kitchen designer and, they're not doing what I say and they're not, I'm not happy. And I'm like, oh, well, we can do better. We can do better. And every time it's been a shit show. And so what I'm learning now is that was a red flag.
That's the client not being happy with.
It probably wasn't the other kitchen designer not doing a good job. It's probably that client's not going to be happy no matter what. And so one thing, as much as that has been a down, like we have had some pain in the butt, like crazy clients that, like, what, I can't.
People get very flustered when it comes to their home. Right. And there's a big expense too.
They can just be like an emotional basket case. No boundaries, like no filter. But
the couples are arguing in front of you 24/7. Like
there's been some
therapeutic services that you're not qualified to get.
But I will say that we have gotten better with like reading those red flags. And like even though it's like, oh, that's a really good job, that could be like $100,000 project. But it's like, oh, I just got to say no.
Yeah.
Or, pardon me, I don't know that I've ever really told anybody no, but, maybe not followed up with them.
That goes like
as
with knowing
promptly.
what client is right for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be hard too. It's like, how do you say no to a client?
Which we're learning, like,
I don't
that's like
know
something.
how. I mean,
It's
still
hard.
to this day, I don't know
Yeah.
how to tell a client no. But I will, in turn, I won't follow up with them as promptly as I should. Like, a month went by, and then they had to fire me.
Right.
Or unfortunately that happens. But
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's again, knowing your value, and like, it's just sometimes you can get that feeling that this might not be like the alignment.
And it's hard if you're hungry for the sale and you're hungry for the business,
Right, you wanna
and
get that
you're maybe
money.
really confident in what you do. And so that's probably the hardest lesson is where I say, I think we've been a little overconfident. I'm like, oh, I can make that person happy. But at the end of the day, they were not going to be happy no matter what.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
That's hard. That's a hard lesson to learn. Hard lesson.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Let's see here. Have you ever felt imposter syndrome, and what was something that has helped you work through feelings about this?
Yeah, I've heard you guys use that term. What does that mean?
So it's when you are like in a position of like, you are like right now you're super successful, but like, do you ever feel like when you sit back or you're having a bad day, like, do I even deserve any of this? Or like, am I the person that I think I am? Am I as experienced as I think I am?
Are my designs even good? Like, it's those kinds of things.
All right, so this is gonna okay. So I heard this thing a while ago, and I don't remember what I was watching, but so Kid Rock has this song, okay? And he's like, everybody knows my name, can't go anywhere, can't go out in crowds. People won't leave me alone. Like, I'm so famous that people recognize me everywhere. I can't go anywhere. Like, this is, this is the downfall to my success, right? And then I found out that he wrote those lyrics before he was ever successful. He wrote those lyrics and sang that and produced that song before anybody even knew who the hell he was.
Love it.
Right? So I often think,
Manifestation.
manifest it. So I mean, I don't know that there's times when I say I don't deserve this, because I do have I've got the time behind me, girls. That's what happens when you get old, right?
And your worth now. I do deserve what I have.
But definitely there's things that just bog you down. Like me, it's finances. Like, oh my God, if I think that I'm upside down or can't, that I am a
Eats you.
basket case. I am literally a mess. So it's and I've learned over the years that about myself. And so I've always just been able to really kind of cap my spending and just, be a good steward of the money that people give me, for deposits, and, try to stretch it and really just keep a good eye on, what's profit and what's, us holding on to other people's money to pay for the materials.
Right.
That's a hard position to be in, though. Like, taking a lump sum of money or a check for $500,000 and then making sure that every little thing is accounted for, being responsible for that. That's a big responsibility.
It is. And if you remember back to the reason that I started my own business was because the company I worked for went bankrupt.
Right.
And I've seen, several local kitchen firms locally go bankrupt because they do that. So when you take a deposit on people's material and then the material doesn't come in for 6 months, you better still have that money in 6 months from now.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not your money to spend.
It's not your money to spend. Yeah. So, I definitely think the early days and really trying to juggle that and understand that is really, that was probably the most stressful part is, handling the money when you now all of a sudden talk about we're a $3 million company and, that's, so you break it down, that's selling $60,000 a week, $57,000 a week.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of other people's money.
Right.
Again, that's not my money.
Right.
So it's a big responsibility. So we want to hire the right people and, make sure we have the right team on it. And
I think too that it's goes back to, and this can apply to all businesses, but knowing your pricing, having your margins set correctly so you are making profit. If you have employees or overhead, making sure that that's covered within what you're charging for your
taxes.
Yeah, being prepared for taxes.
Yeah.
So I think that's that's stuff that you don't think about. When we did our pricing at first, you're the one who told us we need to have at least a 25% cushion, and we were like, oh, we do? It's you don't think about that stuff.
Right.
Well, and I mean, not to bring it all back to politics, but depending on who's like right now, with our current, president, our tax structure is way different than it was 4 years ago.
Right.
I mean, it's really, and that's the part that's probably frustrated me the most. And I think if you talk about throwing in the towel, you really look at what you're supposedly making on paper. But then after you pay all of the taxes and insurance, it's like, man, if I was really just making what the paper says I'm making,
good.
then,
Right.
God, life would be great. I'd be a little cushy. I'd have, maybe a few more luxuries in my life. But, but really, I feel like, a lot of times we're just working hard to pay the man.
Right.
And I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I have a house, I have, a nice vehicle, nice house, I'm comfortable, but, it's taken me a long time to get there.
Right.
And I'm definitely not,
living a lavish lifestyle.
No. And that's okay too. Like I don't, that's not necessarily where I want to be, but, I do, you only get one shot at it, right? You get one chance at life, and I want to make an impact.
And be happy.
I say go for it.
I love
Do anything and everything.
Trying.
Do it all.
Trying.
Okay, couple more here. All right, and we kind of maybe touched on this, so we'll see if you have any other way you want to explain it. But like, how do you handle sticky situations? And if you could give advice to some entrepreneurs with whatever that sticky situation might be, how do you handle them personally?
Well, yeah, there's a couple of things that I always think of. Sometimes in a negotiation, when there's an offer made on the table, there's an old rule that says the next person that speaks loses.
Right.
So sometimes you just need to shut your mouth. Literally.
Very hard for me.
Shut up.
Yep.
See what comes next. But also, maybe sometimes, like if there is somebody who would be like an unsatisfied customer, and instead of you maybe saying, okay, I'm going to give you a 50% refund, maybe don't make an offer. Maybe ask them, like, hey, I realize, this has been, difficult. We might have dropped the ball here or there. What would it take to make you happy? Ask them. Don't just assume the worst in your mind, because what they're thinking might be completely different than what you're thinking.
Right.
If you're ready to write them a check back for, $1,800, maybe really all they want is like one extra post.
Right.
Right. It's like, what would it take to make you happy?
Yeah.
Right.
And then, really just not just assume the worst, but just ask.
Right.
So
And be communicative.
Yeah.
I think that's a good one. Okay. Biggest success or a moment of joy, the most money you've ever made in one shot, taking a big check to the bank. Like, tell us about that experience if you can think of it. And like, what did you do? What'd you go? Did you spend
what was that moment like?
Yeah. Did you spend all that money? What'd you do?
Well, unfortunately, like I said, when people write me the big deposit checks, it's not my money yet. So I haven't really spent any of the money. But, definitely, I'm closing, the biggest contract of my life, a huge, 7-figure contract. Actually closed it last, we're in March now. So just end of just the end of 2022.
Okay.
So the client, stroking that 50% for, big contract, and, just having that check in your hand. Woo! I still, and every time somebody, so we charge a design retainer for people to, to get our services. And, every time I do, I get excited. Every time people like hire us, I do a little dance and, wave the little check around and I get excited. But so no, when I closed that big contract, I went home and had a really nice bottle of champagne and, popped the cork and drank some bubbly and smiled ear to ear.
Last question.
All right.
Are you ready?
I think so.
Okay. And I know this can either tie in everything that we've already talked about or whatever, but if you had some advice for a young entrepreneur, or specifically if you want to speak to like your mompreneur, young mompreneur audiences, what would be like the biggest piece of advice that you could give somebody that's going through that right now?
Just go for it.
Yeah.
Just go for it. I mean, literally. And going back to what we said earlier, like you said, you really think about what's the worst that could happen. Get beyond that fear and maybe try to downplay that fear by saying, what is the possible worst that could happen? And I would say, the younger entrepreneurs, the difference is, and even for me when I was that age, I feel like you always still have some of a safety net, right? Even if it's, past the shame, you move in with your mom, your grandma, your aunt,
Right.
like, you lose everything and you got to start over. But it's like, that's the key to success. It doesn't matter how many times you fail, it's that you tried. So just go for it. I mean, no matter how scary it is,
Right.
just go for it. Do it. Do it.
Just do it.
Do it. Just do it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, that's my best advice. I mean, it's not going to happen if you don't try.
Yes.
Yeah.
You gotta
try
believe
and try
in yourself.
and try again.
Consistency
Yeah.
and patience, people.
Right. If you
Just
fall
get
down,
started.
fall down 7 times, you get up 8.
I love that. I've
Yes.
wanted to get that tattooed since I was younger, but I don't have any tattoos. But I like that. Or like,
Well, the day is young.
I know. Or
Hey.
what is it? Down 9, up 10. That was something that I don't know where I heard that too, but it's like the same thing. Down
Yeah.
9, up 10.
Yeah, just go for it. Don't hold back. Just do it. Yeah.
Love it.
Chase it
Yep.
relentlessly.
Yep.
Well, I know
Yeah.
that you've
Chase
brought in
your
tons
dreams.
of value to not only your children, but many people in our sphere, our friend group, many people around you. You bring a lot of value. And we were so excited to even have you on here just to share like a tidbit of that. We want to know what you guys want to see from her. Should she write a book? Should she continue? She will have an amazing YouTube series, which you need to subscribe to.
Dropping soon.
Give us some ideas. What do we want to see from this woman? She's full of amazing things and she does amazing things. So we want to stay informed. We want to know what's going on with you.
Maybe
And
we
wanna
can
hear
get her
what
to
you think.
come back for another episode
I
sometime.
think we might be
Yeah, I
able
would
to
love
work
to.
it out.
This has been fun. I really
Yes.
appreciate it. Modernpreneurs.
Yes.
Yes.
Love it.
You're the definition of that.
Wow.
Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of the Modernpreneur Podcast with the lovely Dawn Whyte as our amazing guest today.
We hope today brought you guys some impactful information, some valuable information. If you're a mompreneur or a young entrepreneur, obviously this is a great story that you can resonate with and learn from. We hope you got something out of it, and give her a follow on all social media. This is Dawn Whyte with Designs by Dawn at Petoskey Kitchens on Instagram. We will drop all the links below, and we will see you guys next time.
Thanks for having me.
Peace.
Peace.
Bye.